Hey guys, my name is Jack Spectra. However, some of you may be wondering, who am I? I'm a 16-year-old Master Tier Draven one-trick pony. I'm currently sitting at 60% win rate with Draven. And the LoL skill has me ranked as the #1 Draven on EU West. Okay, so first in this Draven guide I'm going to be showing you guys some of the builds. There are a couple to choose from. The first build is sort of the standard build that I'm sure most of you know. It's the Bloodthirster first item into Rapid Fire Cannon, into Infinity Edge, into Mortal Reminder, or Lord Dominic Regards. And a variant of this is going Infinity Edge into Rapid Fire Cannon and Bloodthirster, so you sort of swap up the order of the items. And then the last item is situational between, for example, Guardian Angel, Mercurial Scimitar, and Maw. And this depends on you want Guardian Angel if you're being dived a lot and you're just dying really easily, and you want Mercurial Scimitar if they just have a lot of hard CC, and you want Maw if they just have a lot of magic damage. The best build, however, in my opinion, the absolute best build and my favorite build, it's the one I'm currently using in almost every game, is going Yumu's into Infinity Edge or Bloodthirster, depending on whether I need sustain or not. And this depends on whether or not they have a lot of poke, or if they have a lot of people that can dive easily and you need to sustain after being hit by them. Or you could also go Knight's Edge. However, I don't really prefer this as much because I don't think the spell shield is that great. Or I don't think the damage is that great. The spell shield is really good and is reason to buy it. However, I don't think the damage is good enough to justify the purchase. And after that, I usually go Rapid Fire Cannon or Static Shiv or Phantom Dancer. And this depends on a couple of factors. I go Static Shiv if I need wave clear, and if I'm behind, then I usually go it just so I can clear the waves that they're pushing in faster. And I also go Phantom Dancer if I'm behind, because I can much easily survive their fed tanks and their divers a lot easily. However, I think your Rapid Fire Cannon is really good for snowballing because your auto attack range gets so much longer and you can easily just two-shot people with it. And after this, you either finish your Bloodthirster or your Infinity Edge, depending on what you got as the first or the second item. And after that, you go Last Whisper into then Mortal Reminder and Lord Dominic's Regards. And this, you can also swap up Lord Dominic's Regards, LDR, and the Bloodthirster/IE finish order, so you get the armor pen faster if they have a lot of tanks that you need to kill. And you can also do Yumu's into Bloodthirster into Last Whisper and then go attack speed and crit. That's definitely a very viable option as well. And for boots, I'd recommend just going Berserker's Greaves. There are some times where you can get either Ninja Tabbies or Merc Treads. However, these are so fringe cases and barely ever happens to me. Like 99% of the time you want Berserker Greaves. They're really good boots. Just buy them. Now I'm going to be discussing some of the good matchups for Draven and some of those that are not so good for him. First, we're going to start off with Caitlyn. Caitlyn is a very strong laning champion and is very strong very late in the game. Her weak point is the mid game. However, it's not that hard to beat a mediocre Caitlyn or a Caitlyn that is not that great. There are a few tips to beating her and a few things that you have to keep in mind when laning against her. First off is the fact that she has a lot longer range than you. You shouldn't try to go for reckless auto trades because of this range. You should be wary that sometimes she can get 2 autos off in the range that you can also just get 1 because of her range. And you also have to be wary of her headshot, and it deals a lot of damage. It deals so much damage that you should avoid trying to trade with her when she has it up and just respect her damage. You also have to dodge her Q to win the trades, and you also have to try to bait out her E. For example, pretend to go in with your W and then she tries to use her escape, and then suddenly you've got a 20-second window where you might get a kill or blow her flash. The second thing, or the third thing that you have to watch out for is her traps. Her traps are very dangerous and they do extreme amounts of damage. You have to be very careful and never try to step on them, or never step on them. You also want to try to push her in the entirety of the laning phase, because when she pushes you in, she can easily place traps around your turret, and also auto-attack you when you're trying to get the ranged creeps. And this is very bad for you. So you want to try to keep the lane pushed in, and you want to wait for your support to engage. It's very hard to engage a Caitlyn when she has her E up, so you just want to try to wait for your support. If you have a Thresh, or if you have a Soraka, you can try to engage, of course. You also want to try to cancel her E, but that is extremely hard to do, and I only pull it off in like 1 out of 10 times, and it's not reliable because you have to predict it, and it's at the very end of her E. So I wouldn't really try going for that, rather just try dodging her E. Caitlyn is very good in short trades. She has a lot of burst with her EQ combo, but you have a lot more consistent damage. When you're trying to trade with her, try to all in, except if you can get a free auto on her when she's CSing a creep. If you can get an auto on her while she's CSing, then just take the axe backwards instead of forwards. Because if you take it forwards and you get hit by her E, suddenly you lost that trade. However, if your support hits a CC on her, then it's much better for you to just go all in rather than just getting a few autos, because you likely will win the longer trade. Matchup I'm going to be discussing is against Lucian. Lucian is very good in short trades, so you want to try to extend the trades as much as possible and get as much autos in. You also want to be very careful of his Q. You want to try to dodge it whenever possible with your W movement speed, and you want to stay out of your own minion waves so you can't hit the easy Qs. I think Lucian is a matchup that's not that hard anymore now that Lucian is not that great. I think that if you play correctly, you can easily beat him. The next matchup I'm going to be discussing is against Jhin. Jhin is very strong at the moment with the full lethality build and can be quite hard to deal with. You want to watch out for his grenades, and you want to watch out for his fourth shot. He can easily just fourth shot you and run away because of his movement speed from his passive, so you want to try to trade when he doesn't have that up. You also want to make sure to dodge his W and dodge his ultimate. A lot of the power of Jhin comes from his skill shot, so if you can dodge those, then you're going to do much better against him. The next champion I'm going to be discussing is Varus, who's also very popular lately. Against Varus, you have to be very careful of his range. He has a lot longer range than you and can snare you with his ultimate and still attack you while you can't attack him. You also want to be very careful of his ultimate. It has an extremely long range, and probably a lot longer than you actually think it is, and I've gotten hit by it a lot and thought that I was out of range. You also have to be careful of his Q. It does a lot of damage early and mid game, and if you can dodge it, then you're probably going to be able to win the matchup. But if you can't, then it's going to be a lot harder. However, you can also cancel his Q if he uses it close to you, and that denies him a lot of the damage. Now I'm going to quickly talk about wave control and when you should push and who you should generally push against. It's kind of hard to freeze with Draven because you want to always keep up your two axes, but it sometimes can be done, and especially later in the game where you can easily keep up your both your axes because you have less cooldown on your Qs. However, most of the time you want to be pushing your opponent in, and you want to try to just do whatever you can and play aggressive. Draven is not a scaling ADC, he's one that wants to get fed, and he has a lot of damage, and you just want to try to go ham as much as you can. Sometimes it's smarter to freeze. For example, if you have a lead and you know that you can deny the enemy from even getting to the creeps, and if you have a CC support, this helps even more, because if you have someone like a Thresh, then you can hook them when they're trying to get CS, and suddenly you've got a double kill. However, it's usually better for Draven to push, but you have to be very careful of their jungler, because their jungler likes bottom lane and he likes ganking Draven. If you fall behind early, it is very hard for Draven to come back unless the opponent makes really bad mistakes. Draven is pretty useless when behind, and he's not like a Vayne that's going to scale up and get much better in the late game, at least most of the time. So you have to be careful in lane, and you have to always be looking at your minimap. It's very important to have good map awareness when playing Draven, and also be able to maintain everything at once. Keeping up your axes, knowing when to push, and knowing that you can freeze, And I would also recommend going to Dong Huop's video on his video on how to do wave control. I think that's a pretty good video, and there are a lot of other videos like that that shows you how to manipulate the waves and shows you when you can freeze and when you shouldn't freeze. Tips and tricks and just small things that you should know when playing Draven. The first thing is utilizing your E. A lot of people either don't use their E correctly or don't use it often enough. You want to try to use your E to secure kills. That's a good method of using it early in the game. And you also want to try to E people in the right direction. So for example, if your team's flanking from the left side, then you don't want to E them to the right side away, which is easy to do and really secures the kill a lot easier for your team and you. And you also want to try to cancel other people's abilities with your E, for example Varus Q or Lucian's E or Caitlyn's E and all other dashes, and it's a lot easier for example with Lee Sin's Q. It's very easy to cancel that because he's coming straight at you. You also want to use your ultimate correctly. A big thing with using the ultimate is reactivating it. It's very hard to pull off, and I can safely say that I've never gotten a perfect reactivation. However, with the new practice tool, this is probably going to become much easier, and I'd recommend you all to try and practice it because it essentially makes your ultimate, instead of dealing 200 damage and then 200 damage, it just does 400 damage and is undodgeable. You also want to try doing the ultimate flash because it basically guarantees that your ultimate hits, and you can't reactivate your ultimate when you're throwing it to a person that's really close to you, in time at least. I've tried it a lot. So you have to either use the ultimate flash to really get it right when they're really close to you. But above all guys, to get better at League of Legends, you have to practice. You have to practice catching the axes, and you have to get really comfortable with it. If you continuously lose your axes in lane and just drop them all the time, then you're not going to become a good Draven player. You have to be really comfortable with your axes, and you have to realize that some axes are not worth picking. I often died easily in teamfights because I was so focused on catching my axes that I walked into the enemy Zed that was 5-0 and he just one-shot me. But I wasn't really thinking because I just wanted to catch the axe. But yeah, that was it for my guys. I'm really grateful for the support that I've gotten so far. It's really been insane. I'm like at 177 subscribers now, I think, and just 4 videos, and it seems like people are liking my content, and that really motivates me to continue further. This guide took a lot of effort and took a lot of time to make, and I think a montage of Draven will be coming up soon. And yeah, thank you guys so much, and I hope you enjoy.